Welcome to Think Smart with TMFG. I'm Mike Connon. This is John Iacanetti, Senior Financial Advisor of the McClelland Financial Group of Assante Capital Management. So, John, we're doing a follow-up on part 2 to our first podcast. We're going to open our wallet and start to talk about credit cards. So, we all have these wallets that get filled with credit cards over time. And I go through mine. What do I have here? I got an Amex card. I got a BMO MasterCard. I got a Scotiabank Visa. And all these different credit cards together. So today we're going to address what's good to have in your wallet. We're not going to go into too much names. We'll talk about the features you should sort of look at in credit cards. So again, last time we talked about what a credit card was and how it works. So we did a bit of discussion about how credit cards, what makes sense for age groups, how the interest works and how those payments. So this time what we're going to do is go into a little bit of a detail about what to do with your credit cards. So let's start to talk about balances on credit cards.
Yeah. So, it's pretty straightforward, I imagine, for a lot of you watching at home. As you start to utilize your credit card, we always recommend always going to be spending well within your means because the goal is going to be paying off the balance at the end of every month, or at the very least, the minimum payments that are required at the end of every month. And when paying in full, obviously, you can avoid a good chunk of the interest. But at the same time, in terms of paying off the minimum payment, at least at this point, you're still building a good credit score and credit history in order to prove that you are able to pay that amount down. Yeah, because what we find people run into issues, not necessarily how much you make, but it's if you're able to spend well within your means. And credit cards is a good way to get away from that.
It can happen really easy. I remember when I first got into this industry, I think I was 23 years old. And in the financial industry, I never had a job like this before. And everyone required suits. And at first, I went out and bought at least a shirt and a tie that I could go to work with. And then later on, I was becoming a financial advisor. I went down to a store, I think it was on Bloor. It was called Stollery's at the time. I don't know if you know it's still there, it was a suit place. And I went and saw this suit. And my girlfriend at the time said, "Oh, that would look great on you." And it was $500. And I didn't have $500 to my name, but I was trying to impress her. So I figured after she said how good I looked in the suit, I went and put the suit on my credit card. And that's the first time I ever bought something that I couldn't afford. All right. And you know how long it was before I actually got that suit paid off?
I guess months.
It was years. For years and years, I had a credit card balance. From that day going forward, being my smart financial advisor impressed me with that. I made the stupidest financial decision in my life. I went and bought something I couldn't afford and continued because I couldn't get above it. All of a sudden, the first time I spent what I didn't have, and the next month I didn't have any more, so I still couldn't get it paid off. And you have this acceptance. Once you have a credit card balance, you sort of accept that you have a balance. And the greatest day is when I finally went and I said, I got all my credit card paid off. And since then, I've never had a penny left over on a month-end statement. My main thing is just make sure you can pay everything off. So I encourage everyone to try to do that. Let's talk about ways to take advantage of the credit card companies. We know they can take advantage of us pretty easily. And we know how they do that. If you do make the mistake like I did, that credit card company will take advantage of you. So let's say, how can we take advantage of the credit card companies?
Well, I always recommend people take advantage of the rewards and the cashback options that a lot of these credit card companies are going to offer to you. To your point, it feels like it's a win. At the end of the day, you have to spend X amount of dollars to get X amount of points, but you are getting something back. And there are so many different cards now that can be customized, I guess, to your interest or what you prefer. A big thing right now is travel rewards cards. Personally, I have Aeroplan.
You're a big traveler.
And I'd say every year or every other year, utilizing the points allows me to travel because, it's essentially free flights or free hotel stays just utilizing those
So you basically live your life, spend your normal life, and then once a year you come up and you go to do a trip. And, in reality, as we discussed before, the credit cards are collecting probably 1% to 2% from the vendors.
From the merchant.
From the merchant as they're doing stuff. So this is a way of them putting a little bit back into your pocket. So it's a pretty good system to use for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess the main thing is to, find the one that goes with your lifestyles. You have the travel rewards are one. Some have certain types of shops that you can go to that you can buy from. If you tend to use, I know Walmart has ones, Canadian Tire has ones, things like that. It was funny for years. There weren't many credit cards I had, but I did have a Canadian Tire card. And for a while, all these great credit cards got taken over by the credit card companies. You used to actually have a Canadian Tire card and get a Canadian Tire bill. I used to have a Petro-Canada card and get a Petro-Canada bill.
Yeah.
So I guess it's much simpler now because they're all together. Everything got taken over by Visa and MasterCards. But that used to be one way to keep the company affiliated with what you tend to use. Let's talk about ways to deal with if you do end up in a situation, you do have a balance. Let's talk about ways to deal with that. What are some options you have?
Yeah, I mean, we always take a look at it. If it's a significant balance, the best option you have is to reduce the amount of interest that you'd be due to pay on that amount that you owe. And on credit cards, it's a very difficult thing to do because there's 20 to 25% really in terms of what interest you'd have to pay. So one strategy that you can utilize is using a lower interest form of debt in order to cover that payment. So if you have a line of credit or even a home equity line of credit, something along those lines, you might have an interest rate of 5 to 10, even 15% will be better than what you'll be paying on the credit card. So it's the strategy of utilizing that line of credit to pay off your credit card. So therefore, it makes it easier for you to pay down that line of credit with less interest.
Sometimes credit card companies also offer credit cards at lower interest rates. You may have to pay a fee for them, but they'll have a lower interest rate. The other thing people can do is, I don't love this, but you can juggle because a lot of credit cards will give you 6 months at a low credit rate if you do transfer balances. So this is something, again, not ideal, but people who juggle balances going from a 20% rate and move it over to a card with a, let's say, 6% rate. And that might last for 6 months, then it goes up to 21%.
Yeah.
But people play a bit games in that juggling act.
Yeah, and they even have those options too. If you're thinking about rewards, a lot of these cards have sign-up rewards. So if you're looking to take advantage of that, you can move to one card, capitalize on the rewards, utilize those rewards, and then think about another card. Again, it's a lot to think about, but it's a good way to potentially get something.
So let's look again. We'll switch over to the positive side.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what some people do with credit cards is it does keep your transactions all in one place. So if you're a very organized individual and you pay your bills fully every month, it's a very good way to organize your expenses. You can see everything you spent. You can they actually have programs within these that will itemize things for you, tell you where you're spending your money. We have a lot of clients that don't use bank accounts anymore. Everything, even their bills, everything goes on the credit card. And when you ask them what their expenses are, they just hand you a credit card statement. It gives you everything broken down. So it's pretty amazing what you can do there. Yeah. And the key is they make sure it's paid off every month. Other thing is understanding the interest rates and grace periods of your credit card. Know how it works, know when you have to have that paid by, and make sure it's paid on time. So that's a very important thing to really understand the in-depths of how that works. Also, you can set up automatic payments. I know I'm with one bank, and I can set it so every month my credit card automatically gets paid off. And that way you don't have the risk of missing a payment or doing anything like that. It just automatically transfers from your account to your credit card.
Yeah.
We warn people to be a little bit careful of that because you might not pay attention to your bills.
Yeah. I think for us personally, I can't speak for you, but we're very much well in depth of tracking that and keeping on top of banking apps and things of that nature. A lot of people really just aren't, So like you said, if you do those automatic savings, you better make sure that they're not going to run into overdraft to pay off the credit card bill.
Another dangerous thing people have is subscriptions.
Yeah.
You subscribed to something 4 years ago, and I went through my credit card. I had some McAfee virus software from 1983 that came up. Like, I don't have McAfee in any of my computers anymore. I know it's so old, but it was on an automatic renewal system. So you really have to go and pay attention to those bills, because what happens if you don't, there's some things that you made about a year ago that renew that you may have no use for anymore. Or you might have had family members, using things. I have my kids' things come up on my credit card all the time. I'm like, I still have Angry Birds subscriptions, I think. So you have to watch that stuff and make sure they're all taken off that.
Yeah. We always have the conversation, with clients, keeping track of a budget, making sure every time we update the financial plan, we want to have a good idea, what you spend on a monthly basis. To your point, credit cards do a great job now of amalgamating all that information, but even just turning it into a annual or a semi-annual thing where you review your accounts in terms of where your expenses are going. That's a great way to stay on top of those subscriptions because, like you said, everyone's doing them now for a reason because not a lot of people cancel them and they collect and they earn a lot of money for people being negligent, not keeping track.
Here's some rules here. Avoid cash advances. People don't realize how bad cash advances are on credit cards because usually when you buy something on a credit card, you don't pay any interest, right? If you pay it off on time, there is no cost for this. People somehow get in their mind that if you take a cash advance, the same thing as buying something.
No.
It is absolutely not. You take a cash advance, and it is again interest from day one. The other thing too, until you pay that down full, those cash advances stay on there. So you continue to pay the higher interest rate sometimes on those cash advances. You almost have to pay your credit card down to zero to restart it again before you get anything for free. So be very, very careful with cash advances. Not to max out your credit cards.
Yeah.
You know, that's some people think their limit should be just, well, spend up to my maximum. That does not help your credit rating.
No, it does not.
They don't want to see you there. It's put available to you, but it's not something you want to use. Also, know your fees on your credit cards. Know what you're paying. Again, sometimes you pay fees on credit cards you don't really need to continue to pay. If you're not getting the advantages out of it, you know, there's some great things. American Express has some great cards, but they cost money. And, you know, they give you concierge service to concerts, things like that. But if you're not using that, you can pay $500 a year for a credit card and be taken not advantage of. 500 is a low thing. You can pay 500 or 1,000 or 5,000 for American Expresses.
Yeah.
And if you're not using those benefits, it's a pretty silly thing to keep on doing.
Yeah, there is even features now too that some bank accounts you may have, if it's linked with a credit card, it will actually offset the cost of what you pay on an annual basis for that credit card.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of options out there. It's important to, like you said, first is understanding what the expenses are. But if there's a way that you can have that cost covered in any way, shape, or form, it's worth exploring it.
We'll go back to the good side. We're going back and forth.
Yeah.
Here's some good parts about credit cards. For protection.
Yep.
Many credit cards have built-in benefits. Many have extended warranties. So if you buy something through a certain credit card, you'll get an extended warranty on that product. What are other things they have?
Fraud protection is absolutely huge within credit cards. We've had some cases, myself personally, where if cards get compromised and transactions are made with that card, credit card companies are pretty good in terms of reimbursing that money back.
I gotta say they are very good.
Yeah.
Like, banks will fight you on sometimes. I've seen fraud in accounts, and the banks have sometimes been a bit of a pain returning money. Credit cards are very on top of things, and they understand that's part of their business, and they want to make sure they don't inconvenience you in any way.
Yeah.
So that's my experience. Not necessarily everyone's experience, but my experience is they've been pretty good.
Yeah, and another thing that they offer, and luckily not having to use it, but the travel insurance perks that they do offer. So if you do purchase a trip, specifically a lot of the travel cards would have it built into their terms and conditions. But if you use your card to pay for that trip, you're covered up to X amount of dollars for medical insurance or trip cancellation, trip interruption. It's a good thing to have just in case, because you never know.
I guess the key is to understand your card. I mean, a lot of some cards have rental car protection in them. You know, if you have the right card, you're protected for rental car. But, you know, also, I always warn people, read the contract. You remember we did a trip to Portugal, and we had damage on one rental car, and the rental agency gave us I think it was a 7-person van rather than the minivan. And when we had some damage, the insurance company wouldn't cover it because they said your rental insurance on your credit card only covers a passenger vehicle. This is technically not considered a passenger vehicle. And I found that out. If you rent a pickup truck or something like that, your credit cards don't cover that. So you really got to read the fine print and all that stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, the important thing as well that we often talk about too is even, you know, periodically checking credit reports too. It's a great thing just to stay on top of. Specifically, you know, credit reports are going to be very, very important if you're looking to apply for any sort of loans, a mortgage, or anything like that through one of the major banks. So it's best to spot errors or any potential fraud or anything early on, because you don't want to get caught, you know, needing to get a mortgage and suddenly you realize your credit score wasn't what you thought it once was.
Yeah. And there's two main bureaus, there's Equifax and I think it's TransUnion around it. And you can get free credit reports from them, or you can have them monitor. If you want to pay a fee, you can have them monitor. But sometimes it's a good thing to do to really understand where you sit.
Yeah.
I think that covers most of the stuff on credit cards. There's actually probably not most of the stuff. There's probably tons of stuff to cover, but we want to just give everyone a little bit of an idea on what the advantages and disadvantages are, and hopefully that helps everyone out. So that brings us to the other end of an episode of Think Smart with TMFG, and thank you very much.